We're in October now, so let's take a look back at everything that was picked up in September of 2023. Kicking things off is a nice cross-section of Polish camouflages, which in a way showcase 3 separate generations. In the front is a like-new Civil Guard top boasting an urban woodland-style pattern used primarily during the 1990s and early 2000s, with patches and all. To the left is another top with the very short-lived Puma pattern first introduced in the late 1980s, which replaced the Mora design. These were quickly phased out for the Panther patterns. And finally, a pair of pants which are also in great condition, showing off the very early Rain design. Poland's series of micro patterns is a pretty interesting one, and is a topic that's currently being worked on for a future video, so keep an eye out. Next up are 3 other patterns from the Czech Republic, the United States, and Tajikistan. In the front is a supposed experimental design that appeared in the Czech Republic around the late 80s and early 90s, which ultimately wasn't chosen but is an interesting one due to its very uniquely subdued colors that seem to blend into one another pretty well. Hanging up behind it is a US NWU Type 1 top that's been reissued to the New York State Naval Militia. Keeping the same garments, these simply had the embroidered Navy logo covered by a patch of the militia's emblem, granted somewhat off-angle. Next to that is an unissued Tajik uniform used by their border forces, utilizing a slightly altered version of Russia's Berezika pattern, which since the fall of the Soviet Union has really spread out, seeing various iterations on all sorts of uniforms. Moving east from there is China, with these 5 sets from the Army and Armed Police, PAP for short. The front one is a Type 16 Armed Police pattern that's pretty reminiscent of the older PLA Type 07 family of designs, while in the back from left to right is the PLA Type 21 Gobi and Desert patterns, followed by the newer PAP Type 21 Arid pattern, and finally a lesser-seen Arid variant of the PAP Type 16 used by certain specialized forces of the Armed Police. China has had quite a few patterns over the years, and even though they've been decreasing the number of variants of newer designs, there's still a good amount out there, and when you throw in uniform cuts, there's quite a bit. Anyway though, to finish off the month, we go south a bit to Southeast Asia, specifically Brunei, Vietnam, and Myanmar. Starting on the left is a less commonly used Arid version of Vietnam's K-20 camouflage, worn primarily by units serving as UN peacekeepers. The colors seem inspired by multicam but a bit brighter, while the cut is a little different than the typical K-20s. Next to that is a strange one, as it's an almost shadow-type DPM out of Myanmar, which is actually used by Kachin rebel forces fighting against the government. Being that many uniforms are made in neighboring China, various camouflages and cuts have been seen, with this particular set seeming to have its insignia and badging removed. Finally is the DPP, or Digital Disruptive Pattern, a sort of US AOR Type 2 clone, worn by members of Brunei's armed forces. It seems that the country has taken a few patterns from the US and slightly altered or based their designs on them, with the Air Force and Navy also having sort of clone patterns too. But that will more or less bring us to the end of this month's video. Thanks for checking in, and we'll be back next month with everything picked up on October. Until then.